Everybody, good afternoon. We'll get started here in a second.
Technology advisor 877 Ask Dell.
From the Final Phase Electric Studios. From the first step to the final phase, industrial and commercial electrical done right. This is Casey Hendrickson on News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel, your breaking news and weather station.
Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do want to thank RNB Car Company, locations in South Bend and Warsaw. Find them online at rbcarcompany.com. All right, let's take a look at a little bit what's happening with the military, the National Guard, everything at the Capitol. And there's a lot of people, constitutionalists, who are growing increasingly concerned about the way that things are being done at the Capitol. So yesterday I was made aware that 2,000 National Guard troops in D.C. were actually sworn in as special deputies to the U.S. Marshal Service. Now that gives those 2,000 troops law enforcement capability. The other troops that are there do not have that capability. So this is a little bit different. The legalities and stuff like that, I'm not real familiar. It didn't seem like that would be something that we would ever consider when I was in the military. So I don't know. But again, just letting you know that it happened. So 2,000 National Guard troops in D.C. were sworn in as special deputies with the U.S. Marshal Service. But then we've got this, 2 National Guardsmen. Now remember, the FBI is vetting every single National Guards person who's there. So they're doing like additional background checks on our military, assuming that our military is automatically the bad guy. That's the assumption here. They're automatically the bad guy, at least potentially. Now, when you throw in, you've got members of Congress out there saying that they believe that the Capitol Police are a danger to their lives and that the Republicans who are in Congress may very well be trying to get them killed. Now, you have to understand something. I'm not saying that. Democratic members of the House of Representatives, a couple of senators, have said that. So they're out there saying that their Republican counterparts are trying to get them executed and that they don't trust the Capitol Police to protect them because they think the Capitol Police, or at least some of them, might be in on it. Now, again, there's no evidence of this. It doesn't exist anywhere. So I will use the media's favorite term, even though they actually don't abide by this in any way, shape, or form. Without evidence, members of the Democratic Party who are getting attention for this on the news media are saying that they believe Capitol Police officers and Republican members of Congress are trying to get them assassinated. That is a real thing that is happening right now. I mean, it's gone beyond just the whole, we gave them tours of the facility so that way they would know where to go and what to do. It was beyond that. I mean, they actually think, AOC said that she can't trust the Capitol Police officers next to her. And we have seen this rhetoric all summer long. We've seen it with a lot of celebrities and sportscasters and things like that, who have said that about law enforcement simply because the individual happened to not be white and that they didn't want law enforcement around protecting them at events that they did. We've quoted a ESPN personality several times on the show. He said he didn't want at all. He didn't want any law enforcement around him because he didn't want the law enforcement that was tasked with protecting him while he called the game to shoot him in the back because of the color of his skin. He said that. So we've seen this rhetoric all summer long. It goes back further than that, but on a consistent, regular basis, day in, day out, all summer long, we have heard this rhetoric. Law enforcement is inherently bad. Law enforcement will inherently execute you, not just for the color of your skin, but also because they may not like your politics. And as I've pointed out, it's a very weird line for you to try and toe while at the same time celebrating Capitol Police and DC police who protected you from a mob. And there are law enforcement groups that have called the Democrats out on this. Like, hey, all of a sudden you're pro-law enforcement? What's going on? You got Nancy Pelosi out there applauding the National Guard. Nancy Pelosi went on a tirade for days about the National Guard being used against Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters and rioters who were destroying entire cities, not just breaking into a building, but destroying entire cities and burning entire neighborhoods down. And she was very against that. But, hey, now that they're protecting her, It's the same old hypocrisy that you see out of politicians all the time. You're not allowed to have a gun to protect your family. Here's my, have I introduced my armed security guards, plural. So this is just how things operate, the political class versus you and me. So 2 National Guardsmen are now being removed from the inauguration security mission after they were found to have ties to, quote, fringe right-wing militias, after the Guard's chief said that he wasn't concerned about potential for insider threats. Okay. I've covered this a lot. And for the record, the military is chock full of white supremacist narrative is back. Happens once to twice a year. All right. This has been something that has been happening since before I was even in the military. This is consistent. Now, do extremist groups and gangs and things like that have people that go to the military to get training and bring it back? Absolutely. Sure. Very, very rarely. They're certainly not the norm, but it does happen. And there have been times where they have found larger groups of them that have found each other on a particular base, and they've been able to break that up. Okay. So it does happen. But the impression that is always given, this exact line of thinking, the way that they're talking about the military, the way that they are talking about Republicans, the way that they're talking about conservatives and all of that, it is exactly the same as we saw in the 90s. It's exactly the same when you start looking at it. Oh, they're all radicalized. They're tied to these militias. They're all white supremacists. The military's overrun with white supremacists. It's the exact same thing. Remember, the playbook says we do this thing until it doesn't work anymore, and then we recycle into something that we've already done that already failed, and then we'll just keep doing it. And eventually it'll take hold. And that's where we're at. All of this stuff, there's a lot of us who have been doing this for a long period of time who are seeing all of the old patterns from the 90s and the early 2000s come right back again. And I told you yesterday, all of the things that we dealt with daily in the Obama administration, be prepared to have those exact same conversations again. We're going to be talking about immigration. We're going to be talking about border walls. We're going to be talking about Muslim extremists. We're going to be talking about all of these normal things that we always talked about, and gas prices and energy independence and all of that stuff, which is going to go away. All of that will become the normal talking points again under a Biden administration. So the Army official and a senior U.S. intelligence official confirmed on Tuesday that the 2 National Guard members had been removed from the mission to secure Joe Biden's inauguration. It is not clear what fringe group the Guard members belong to or what unit they served in, probably because it doesn't exist. That would be my best guess. Or a fringe group might be something like the Oath Keepers, which liberals get really spooked about. But really what the Oath Keepers is just law enforcement, military personnel, others who have taken a constitutional oath, who vow to uphold that oath should it ever be needed to uphold the oath over your orders. That's all it is. It never did evolve into an extremist group or a terrorist organization or a racist group or anything. That never happened. It was all a lie. Because again, everything that might be pro-right-wing, anti-left-wing, pro-Constitution, anti-rewrite the Constitution, anything like that must be demonized as a white supremacist terrorist group. Every single solitary thing. And this has just been the MO. And the sad part is that people fall for it consistently over and over and over again. I have asked relatives, I've asked people who are acquaintances. I was like, don't you find it funny that every single Republican candidate ever for any major office is a white supremacist? Don't you find that eerie and weird? Even the black ones? And they all look at me like, oh, what are you talking about? I'm like, literally every single one of them. Every single one of them. They're all white supremacists. Even the ones who are not white. Especially the ones who are not white. So it's, at some point in time, you would hope that some higher form of critical thinking will kick in people's brains and they will snap out of it. It just doesn't happen. That's just not how things work. So they removed at least a couple of National Guardsmen. They won't tell you anything. They won't tell you anything about the alleged group they're supposedly tied with, which I don't think it's a real group. And if we get more information on that and that changes, I'll let you know. But there's also no mention about them being removed from the National Guard and separated from the military. If it is so bad that they're a part of these organizations that they cannot be a part of an inauguration security detail, then surely they can't even be a part of the National Guard, right? So why all of the secrecy, and why are we not talking about the process to remove them and separate them from the Guard is ongoing? Why didn't that come up? Probably because it's not happening. All right, we've got more coming up. Newstalk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. All right, let's get the Daily Show prep up here. Hold on a second, folks.